I found out my HOA president had been stealing from the neighborhood because she tried to fine me for building a bridge for my kids. And honestly, if that sounds petty, wait until you hear how far she took it. She didn't just come after my bridge. She came after my job, my kids, my name, and by the time she was done, she pushed me so far that the only thing left to do was tear the whole lot down in front of everyone. My name's Jake Morrison. I'm 45. I'm an electrician. And 6 months before all this started, my life had already been blown apart once. My marriage was over. 15 years gone, just like that. My ex had the polished lawyer life. I had a pickup truck, a tool belt, and a head full of noise I couldn't shut off. So when I bought that old fixer-upper in Willowbrook Estates, I wasn't chasing luxury. I was chasing quiet. A place where my 2 kids, Emma and Tyler, could come every other weekend and feel like life still had some magic left in it. The house needed work, sure, but the land was what sold me. 2 wooded acres, a creek cutting to the backyard, that clean smell after rain, the kind of place where you can hear water moving over stones on the porch and almost believe things might turn out okay after all. The first time I brought the kids over, Emma spotted this giant oak tree across the creek, and Tyler decided, right there on the spot, that it needed to become a tree Fort Kingdom. Problem was, getting there meant hopping wet rocks or wading through water that got deeper than it looked. I'm a dad. I've spent half my life fixing things people ignored until somebody got hurt. So I did what made sense. I built a bridge. 3 weekends. $800 in cedar, bolts, concrete, stain, all of it paid for with overtime and sore hands. I built it solid too. 12 feet long, railings on both sides, non-slip treads, proper footings, the whole deal. Tyler said it was the coolest thing in the universe. Emma actually helped me stain the rails, which, if you've ever had a 12-year-old willingly put down her phone, you know that counts as a small miracle. For the first time in a long while, I stood there looking at something I made with my own hands and felt proud. That feeling lasted maybe 12 hours. The next morning, I heard tires on gravel, sharp and fast, and this black Mercedes SUV rolled into my driveway like it was answering a call to war. Out stepped Bethany Cromwell, HOA president, 50-something, rich, polished, and dressed like a country club had learned to walk, clipboard in hand. Fake smile on her face, the kind that never reaches the eyes. She came marching across my yard like she owned the land under her heels. "Good morning, Mr. Morrison," she said, with that sweet tone people use when they're about to do something ugly. Then she handed me a violation notice. $350. My bridge, apparently, was an unauthorized visual modification visible from neighboring properties. I had 7 days to remove it. After that, $50 a day. I remember just staring at the paper, like maybe if I looked hard enough it would turn into a joke. It didn't. I told her the bridge was on my property. She said community standards still applied. I asked her to show me the rule. That made her blink. She said I'd need to file a formal request through proper channels. That was the first crack. Tiny, but I saw it. People who actually know what they're talking about usually don't get slippery when you ask for specifics. And right then, like some gift from the universe, old Mrs. Patterson wandered up the road with her ancient beagle. She slowed down, admired the bridge, and said her late husband had built county bridges for years and would have respected the workmanship. Bethany tightened up so fast I thought she might split a seam. Then Mrs. Patterson, sweet as pie, mentioned Bethany's backyard gazebo and wondered out loud if that had ever gone through board approval. You could have lit a cigarette off the heat coming off Bethany's face. She shoved the notice at me and left. But something had shifted. I could feel it. This wasn't about aesthetics. It wasn't about a bridge. It was about control. About putting the divorced, blue-collar guy in the pickup truck back in his lane. That would have been irritating enough on its own, but Bethany wasn't the kind of person who stopped after one shot. Monday morning, the county building inspector showed up because she reported my bridge as unsafe. Now, I know enough code to know I was fine, but still, when a city truck pulls into your driveway, your stomach drops. Inspector Ray Kowalski checked the structure, tugged the rails, looked at the footings, then basically said the bridge was built better than most decks he saw all year. Bethany showed up halfway through, full of fake concern, and Ray shut her down right there in my yard. Said she'd already called his office 14 times in a week about my property alone. 14. That should have embarrassed her. Instead, it made her angry. By Tuesday night, she'd taken a fight online. She made this neighborhood social media group and started posting photos of my bridge like I'd built a chemical plant behind my house. Long rants about safety, property values, standards, all that language bullies love because it sounds respectable from a distance. But that was her mistake. Once everything was public, other people started talking too. Tom Rodriguez from down the street defended the bridge. Mrs. Patterson praised the craftsmanship. Even my ex-wife, Sarah, who had rolled her eyes through half my weekend projects during our marriage, posted that I built it for the kids' safety. Bethany was trying to humiliate me, but all she really did was create a paper trail. Then she got mean. She sent her brother-in-law, David, an attorney, over to threaten liens and legal action. Poor guy looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. So I asked one simple question. Had he verified the HOA's current legal standing with the state before threatening me? And there it was. That look. The one lawyers get when they realize they may have just stepped onto a landmine. Because while Bethany had been busy waging her little crusade, I'd been reading. I'd spent enough nights during my divorce learning that public records tell the truth way more often than people do. So I'd looked up the HOA registration. It had expired. Not last week. Not last month. 18 months earlier. I called the state office to make sure I wasn't missing something. Nice lady on the phone confirmed it in under 3 minutes. Willowbrook Estates' HOA had lapsed. No legal status. No enforcement authority. No standing. Which meant every fine Bethany had issued during that time had about as much power as a handwritten threat on a napkin. That was the moment the whole thing changed. Because once I knew the HOA was dead on paper, the next question came easy. Where had the money gone? Mrs. Patterson answered that one. That evening she invited me over and opened a manila folder that looked thick enough to ruin a small government. Turns out she'd been quietly documenting Bethany for 2 years. Notices, copies of checks, meeting minutes, names, dates, patterns. And the pattern was ugly. Single mothers, elderly homeowners, working families, minorities, anybody Bethany thought wouldn't fight back. Over $12,000 in fines. And the real kick in the teeth? The money hadn't been going into a proper HOA account. It had been deposited into Bethany's personal checking account. I sat there in Mrs. Patterson's living room, breathing in the smell of snickerdoodles and old paper, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Up to that point, I thought Bethany was a petty tyrant with too much time and too little soul. But this was fraud. This was theft dressed up in nice shoes and official letterhead. So we organized. The next night, my living room filled up with neighbors carrying folders, envelopes, screenshots, bank records, violation notices. Sarah Mitchell, an ER nurse and single mom, brought proof Bethany had squeezed nearly $1,000 out of her over a trampoline. Tom and Maria brought landscaping fines. Mrs. Patterson brought enough documentation to make a prosecutor smile in their sleep. We mapped it all out on my coffee table, like a war plan, because that's what it was by then. Not revenge. Defense. We filed coordinated complaints. Attorney General. Fraud Division. Consumer Protection. Police. Everybody. We notified residents. We told the truth, clearly and with receipts. And Bethany, being Bethany, responded the only way she knew how. She escalated. She called my boss and tried to get me fired, claimed I was some liability risk building death traps. My boss told her, in terms much less polite than mine, to take a walk. Then she contacted my kid's school, asking questions about my home like she was building a case. That was the moment I stopped seeing her as ridiculous and started seeing her as dangerous. When my daughter called crying because some strange woman had been asking about our house, something inside me went hard. You can come after me all day long. You involve my kids. Now you cross a line you don't get to uncross. By Monday night, she called an emergency HOA meeting at the community center, probably thinking she could scare the neighborhood back under her thumb. She even doctored photos of my bridge for a slideshow, added fake warning signs, made it look like some hazard zone. It would have been funny if it weren't so shameless. The room was packed. Neighbors, families, people standing along the walls. Bethany got up front in a blazer like she was running for office and started her speech about community safety. Then one by one, people pushed back. Tom, Sarah, Mrs. Patterson. You could feel the air changing. The fear she'd been living off for years was evaporating right there in public. Then I stood up. I told the room the HOA had been legally inactive for 18 months. I told them about the $12,000. I told them about the personal account. I read the investigation case information out loud. And when the noise hit the room, anger, disbelief, people talking over each other, Bethany just sat there turning pale. The next night was the annual meeting, and that one was even bigger. Local news showed up. A sheriff's deputy sat in the back. Bethany looked like she hadn't slept in a week. I walked to the front with a briefcase full of evidence and laid it out piece by piece. Not dramatic, not loud, just facts, dates, records, deposits, victims. That's the thing about truth. When you have enough of it, you don't need to scream. Sarah stood and talked about choosing between groceries and her kids' medication while Bethany took her money. Other neighbors spoke up too. The whole pretty little mask tore off in public. Then the reporter asked Bethany if she planned to return the stolen funds. That question just hung there in the room like thunder. The deputy approached with paperwork. And that was it. Game over. Bethany resigned within 24 hours. She ended up on a court-supervised repayment plan. Her brother-in-law had his own mess to deal with after threatening people on behalf of a dead HOA. New elections were held. Mrs. Patterson became president, which honestly felt like letting the nicest sniper in America take the tower. We reinstated the HOA properly, added oversight, transparent accounting, term limits, all the stuff that should have existed in the first place. And my bridge? It's still there. 6 months later, I stand on it sometimes in the evening and watch Emma and Tyler race across with other neighborhood kids toward that tree fort like none of this darkness ever touched the place. The railings are worn smooth now from small hands. Somebody carved Freedom Bridge into one of the posts. I'm 90% sure it was Tyler. The same structure Bethany tried to tear down became the one thing this neighborhood now loves most. Funny how that works. The truth is, I learned something ugly through all this. Most bullies don't survive on strength. They survive on paperwork, confusion, and the hope that decent people are too tired to fight back. They count on you assuming they know more than you. They count on you folding. And sometimes the most dangerous person in a nice neighborhood isn't the loud one. It's the polished one, the one smiling while they pick your pocket and call it order. But I learned something better too. One person pushing back matters. One neighbor paying attention matters. One old teacher with files in a manila folder can change everything. So yeah, Bethany tried to turn my dream into a nightmare over a bridge built for my kids. In the end, that same bridge was where her whole little empire collapsed. And I'd be lying if I said watching that happen didn't feel good. So let me ask you this. When somebody abuses a little bit of power for a long time and nobody stops them, is fighting back justice? Or is it revenge with better timing? Tell me what you think. And if you've ever dealt with a bully hiding behind rules, money, or fake authority, I'd love to hear your story too.